The classical line in psychoanalysis is considered to be of Freud, Klein, and Wilfred Bion. The three are in the same line. And then we have deviations like Jung is slightly different or radically different, I should say. Kohut is different. Winnicott is slightly different. But the three of them, they constitute a very classical line. Freud, Klein, and Wilfred Bion. Wilfred Bion was analyzed by Klein, was also in a way a student of Klein. He developed Kleinian ideas further, but it took a very different turn. So much so that many of his ideas were not actually endorsed by Klein. Wilfred Bion is believed to be one of the most enigmatic, mystical, and difficult to understand writers in psychoanalysis. And his concepts actually are too deep for most to actually even understand them. Because he's operating at one of the deepest levels of the psyche. Today we'll have an introduction to Wilfred Bion and his ideas in the context of therapy and psychoanalysis. I have given the title Wilfred Bion the Empty Space because Bion was very fond of the concept of the empty space. We'll come to it in the course of our discussion, but just to preface it, he used to say, let no one who knows fill up the empty space. Let the empty space be empty till long enough till it finally decides to speak itself. He looked at empty space in the session as something very productive, something very salutary, something very healing. Many therapists actually dread the silence in the room. It's too anxiety provoking for them. Many of them believe it's not productive. But Bion saw a lot of productivity in that silence, in that empty space. So let us go into Bion. Two pictures of Wilfred Bion as a young army officer and in his later days. Bion continues the traditional line of psychoanalysis. If you draw the line, it will have Freud, Klein, and Bion. Wilfred Bion was born in Mathura in India, and his father used to serve in the British government. He was very close to his mother and his caregiver, the Aya. And at the age of 7, like everyone else of British upper middle class, the boys were sent to boarding school at the age of 7. And this was very traumatic for Bion because he was deeply attached to India and to his Aya, the caregiver. And this was one of the two traumas that probably were with him all throughout his life. The separation and the breaking of attachment from a place and from a caregiver. Donald Winnicott had a similar fate. He was also sent to school at the age of 7, boarding school, and he wrote, I would not send even a dog at 7 to a boarding school. In a way, both of them shared a similar fate, a similar trauma. So let us look at Wilfred Bion. He joined the army as a young man, as an officer. In one of the battles, his unit was asked to attack and officers knew that it was almost like a suicidal attack. But like a good soldier, he carried out that order and he showed a lot of bravery. But in that suicidal attack, what happened was many of his soldiers died. Many of them were crying in pain. Many of them were running away. Some of them were running away and coming back. Some of them were acting normal, and some of them suddenly would go in some psychotic state and act in a strange way. And after some time, again, act in a normal way. So he saw coexistence of the psychotic and normal states of the mind. And this was a very deep insight for Bion, how the human mind works under extreme stress of impending death in the face of it. And he saw the coexistence of psychotic states and normal states, that in every man there is a psychotic component of personality. And normalcy and psychotic states, they coexist. Like Jung used to say, we are all psychotic 8 hours a day, every 24 hours. When we go to sleep and we dream, we are in a psychotic state. And every 24 hours, for 8 hours, we are in almost like a psychotic state. Just the difference is, we go psychotic with our eyes closed, and the psychotic goes psychotic with his eyes open. Bion saw psychotic states being entered into by otherwise healthy people, many of whom were his soldiers and his junior officers. In fact, many of them were more healthy than most healthy people in society, and yet they would enter into a psychotic state under extreme stress and again come back to normalcy after some time. So this disassociation between a normal state and a psychotic state, Bion felt was very normal. Under adequate stress, anybody can enter into a psychotic state and come back. This trauma was a second trauma. After the going to the boarding school, this battle was a second trauma, and he never really overcame completely the two traumas. And he also got a medal for bravery. So after this, Bion went on to study further, and he studied psychiatry. And after studying psychiatry, he went into psychoanalysis. Bion looked at pathology in two different ways: individual pathology and group pathology. Bion was the first to extend psychoanalysis from micro to the macro, because he studied pathology in groups. Till then, we were looking at pathology in terms of an individual only. Psychoanalysis was applied only to the patient, not to a group of patients simultaneously. But Bion had no choice, because after he joined psychiatric service, it was Second World War, and he would get so many people traumatized from the war that they just did not have adequate number of psychiatrists that they could see one-to-one. And therefore, there was no choice but to see in groups. And this started with Bion, a very long-term exploration for Bion, what he published in terms of 2 books, working with groups. That how do you work therapeutically with groups? Even today, group therapy is an area by itself. And this is an area we should be exploring for a country like India, where people can't pay and there are too many people. Irvin Yalom is one of the good contributors to group therapy. So you can look at some of the videos of Irvin Yalom. IRWIN, Irvin, YALOM, Yalom. So Bion was the first, really speaking, to get into groups with psychoanalysis. So he looks at pathology in 2 ways: pathology in individual context and pathology in group context. During Second World War, he was given psychiatric duties to relieve the trauma of traumatized soldiers and send them back to the front, to find out if the trauma was real or the soldier was faking it in order to avoid the front. And here, Bion started working in groups. And what Bion found was that groups are highly susceptible to regression because the collective settings intensify unconscious anxieties. Rational discourse is fragile and emotional contagion is very powerful. It is far more difficult to be rational in groups than it is to be individual. There are too many pressures, too many unconscious interactions in the group, too many projections, too many transparencies, too many projective identifications, too much of fame and shame, too much of domination and submission, too much of anxiety of being cornered in the group. So the group is far more fragile and pathological entity than an individual left alone. And therefore, we often see that individually many people are good, but in the groups, they behave very nastily. The worst in them comes out in groups. Bion found that a group can be in two different situations. One, it can be in a rational situation, what Bion called as the work group. That if you have a group and if you give the group a task, two things will happen. One, either the group can behave as a rational group and continue to focus on the task at hand. I'm going to put up in YouTube if you are writing. I mean, if you like, it's perfectly okay, but I will put it in the group anyway. I'm putting all the videos in the group. So a group, when you give it a task, it can go in two directions. One, it can behave as a rational group and focus on the completion of the task. This state in which the group is called by Bion as the work group. The group focused on the work. But often what will happen is the group will not focus on the task, but will get absorbed in some other state, which is a pathological state away from the task at hand. And this state Bion termed as the pathological group. That the group goes into a state of pathology. It's no longer a rational collection of people who are bringing together their abilities to finish a task. It has taken a psychological mode where the task is put aside and now the group is busy with something else. And this pathological group can go into either of the three states. The first state Bion described was the state of dependency. That there is one omnipotent narcissistic leader who comes up in the group and the rest of the group behaves like everyone is a dependent and they are just depending on that person to lead the group, tell the group what to do, decide whom to reward and whom to punish. And everyone wants to be obedient and pleasing to that person. So this state, which is very common into which groups get, is termed by Bion as the dependency group. Alternately, the group, instead of going into a narcissistic dependent pair, can go into a fight or flight situation. In the first situation, what we saw was, it was activating dependence and narcissism. It was creating that kind of a combo. That one person takes a narcissistic position, rest of the group members take a dependent position. That is one state. Second state, the entire group can get into fight or flight. In Kleinian terms, we will say the split is open. And now at an unconscious level, everyone feels you have to hunt or be hunted. You are in the forest. It's I kill you or you kill me. So they are in a fight or flight state. Everyone in the group is in the fight or flight stage. And Bion says, in this stage, in all the three states, pathological state, the group chooses the pathological members of the group as their leaders. The most common thing in dependency is to choose a narcissist. In fight or flight, it is to choose somebody psychotic with a violent streak. Somebody extremely sadistic. And the third is the group gets into a pairing state, meaning two people of the group, they start taking the lead and keep discussing between themselves, and rest of the group becomes an onlooker, just an audience. The situation there is of a family. The father and mother are talking and all the children are listening. So the Oedipal dynamics are evoked, just as the Kleinian dynamics are evoked in fight or flight. The Oedipal dynamics and the sibling dynamics are evoked in the pairing. That one takes the state of the position of the father, one takes the position of the mother, and rest of the group takes the position of children. And they are waiting for the two adults to decide what the group should be doing, and then they obey. So Bion said, these are the pathological states into which many groups go into. And it's very necessary for every group to be aware whether they are working as a work group or they have become a pathological group. And if pathological group, then which member is displaying what pathology? And this is true of our organizations, that in most organizations, groups are pathological groups. There are very few countries in the world like Japan and Germany who have been able to create work groups more than the pathological groups. To some extent, China also. That Chinese, Japanese, and Germans, somehow they work very well in groups. So they as a society are able to create, as a percentage, far more work groups than the pathological groups. In India, it is a disaster. That of all the groups we create, hardly 20% are work groups. 80% of the groups ultimately degenerate into being a pathological group. And the group is interested in everything except the task. So one of my teachers used to say, in India, every group is a pathological group unless proved otherwise. Let us go further. Wilfred Bion, the nameless dread. So let us see how we see the line from Freud to Klein to Bion. Freud discovered the unconscious, the existence of the unconscious, the characteristics of the unconscious, defenses, structure of the psyche, and primacy of desire. And Freud's idea was, it is the frustration of desire which is at the root of pathology. Klein specified it further, that what type of desires are more primary and what type of desires are secondary. And she said that desires directed in the field of object relations are primary. That you can have many desires. For example, desire to eat a chocolate. If you don't get, you're not going to get as traumatized as if you lose a person early in your life. The loss of the mother and inability to have a chocolate, you can't equate the two. Although both are instances of desire frustration. Loss of money and loss of a person can't be equated. Though both are instances of desire frustration, both are instances of loss. So Klein said that even if we believe desire is primary, pathology is more concentrated when desire is focused in the field of object relations. That desires frustrated in the field of object relations are far more important in pathology than other desires. So the core of pathology is what happens in early life in object relations. Bion brought in the process knowledge of this phenomenon. That when we say object relations, when we say feelings, when we say thoughts, how do these things arrive? Do we have by birth a process that we are capable of, or do we learn it after our birth in the field of experience? And Bion went into the manufacturing process of thought in a very different way. Like Immanuel Kant also went into the process of manufacturing of thought. How do thoughts arise? What is the limit of thoughts? Is there something called unknowable? Or is everything just known and unknown? And as we think more and time passes, more and more of the unknown becomes known. Or is there something called unknowable that the species will never be able to know given the structure of the thinking apparatus? That like our bones have a limit, our skin has a limit, everything has a limit. Do our thoughts also have a limit? That was the question of Immanuel Kant of, is there something called unknowable? Are there things that our thought just can't think? So Bion brings in epistemology, which is a part of philosophy, which is dealing with the problem of knowledge and the problem of thinking. So epistemology, which is an area in philosophy, that deals with this whole area of knowledge, of thought, of the process of thinking and so on, limits of knowledge and so on. So what Bion did was, he brought epistemology into psychoanalysis in a minor way. He was not trained in philosophy. So he brought it in his own original way, in a minor way. But if he was trained, he could have done much more. So what Bion does is, he focuses on the processes rather than phenomena. And he goes into a process of thought. How does thinking come about? For example, Klein had said that Freud's idea of a micro-man is wrong. That we don't come into this world capable of thinking. Just as we are not entering this world capable of walking. Initially, when we try to walk, we fall down, we stumble. And after repeated attempts, we learn how to balance our body and walk. The same process happens in thinking, that we are not able to think straight away after we are born. Initially, we stumble to think, and the stumbling is nothing but fantasy. It's a very psychotic fantasy. So our sane thinking emerges out of psychotic fantasy. And therefore, in regression, when we lose the capability of sane thinking, we fall back into the original matrix of psychotic fantasy. So Klein said that instinct, as it comes in the realm of the mind, first manifests itself in the form of primordial fantasies. And through the primordial fantasies, we stumble to think and slowly we learn to think. And therefore, we think between dreaming. We don't dream between thinking. Dreaming is a more primary and natural ground, whereas thinking is more of an acquired skill. Bion goes into details of how do we graduate from this primordial fantasy into the capability to think. And here, we have to look at two important concepts before we go into the part of the real concept of it. So Bion goes into two concepts, separately and then goes to thinking. The first concept in preparation is Klein used to describe projective identification as a defense. Are you clear with projective identification and projection? Difference between the two?
Not actually, sir.
So in projection, what happens is the person disowns a feeling in himself and attributes it to someone.
Which
Like,
I don't like, I see it in the other.
correct.
For example, if I feel very helpless, then I project it out and believe that the world is cruel.
Correct. So what happens is, if I am angry at you, I will say you are angry at me. So I am unable to accept my anger. So I put it on you. Children do it very often. That they do something and then they say, no, you have done it. And unless you accept, they will keep crying. So it is inability to accept parts of oneself which we put onto others, which is also the phenomena in paranoia. That I want to kill you, but my superego will not allow me to accept it. So I put it on you that you want to kill me, and now I have paranoia. That my anger is projected onto you, and now you look threatening to me. That is how an innocent object becomes a phobic object. That the aggression of the person is projected onto the innocent object, and now it becomes phobic. So that's a classical example of mechanism of paranoia and phobia. That we cannot accept parts of us, we put it onto someone else. But the other person does not know anything of it. It's all in our mind. Like if I am angry at you and I say you are angry at me, you don't feel that anger. You don't know anything about it. You are surprised. What are you saying? I have no anger towards you right now. I'm not even thinking about you. I'm thinking about somebody else. So you don't have any feeling or knowledge of what is going on in my mind. That is projection. In projective identification, which is a slightly more complicated thing, if I am angry at you, I put my anger into you and you actually start feeling angry towards me. And this often happens in therapy.
How can I put my anger into you?
Yeah, that is how there are two ways of it. One is it's completely unconscious and nobody knows how it happens. But this has been checked out repeatedly in therapy and every time it comes true. And this is a very powerful tool of therapy, especially in psychosis and personality disorders. It's a very powerful tool of therapy. And also in depression. That what will happen is unbearable feelings of the patient will be put into you. And all of a sudden you will have a change of mood and you will start feeling those things and you don't know where they are coming from. That few minutes back you are in perfectly good mood and suddenly you feel anger. Suddenly you feel sadness. Suddenly you feel anxious. You feel suffocated. You feel confused. And if you ask the client, most of the times it will come true. So when I feel projective identification and anger, I ask my client, towards whom this anger is that you're feeling right now? And 90% of the times the client comes up, yes, I'm feeling anger towards X. And the moment he says it and he feels it, you will stop feeling it.
But there is one assumption in this, no, sir? The therapist is normal.
That?
The therapist himself is normal or herself.
Correct. So
But
that is
the
where
therapist actually is not feeling angry because of some unconscious personal conflicts of his or hers.
correct. It's a very good question. And that is why, precisely because of this reason, very few people are able to work with projective identification because most of the times it's their own material. That what the client has said has evoked something in them. It is
mm,
their anger, not the client's anger.
mm,
And therefore, when they ask the client says, no, I don't feel anything.
mm,
And after
mm,
3 or 4 times, they stop doing it.
mm.
So it's very important, therefore, to go into your own therapy before you start seeing others. And therefore, in every psychoanalytic course, it is compulsory for every student to undergo 2 years of therapy himself, at least 3 days a week. So you must undergo 500 hours of therapy at least, so that you are clear about your own material and you don't confuse your material activating with projective identification. And that is also important, that you remain anonymous. If your real life incidents are known to the client and because of that he is getting angry, then that is not projective identification. I mean, it can be projective identification in terms of the process, but the setting has been vitiated.
In a
See,
blank
if you
mirror.
have been so if you are a blank screen, then what is coming from the client is completely his material.
Exactly.
He is not responding to your facts of life.
Mm,
So if you have cleared out yourself enough and you are very clear what can activate in me, and you know it is not me, then it's projective identity.
May I say something here?
Please.
What I often say to the patient, if I find that they're being guarded or defensive or apprehensive, I say to the patient, oh, who are you afraid of? If they say, I feel fear, I said, of whom? And then they said, of you. Then I said, oh, even a child doesn't feel afraid of me. What makes you feel afraid? And then perhaps that conveys to the patient, this is my understanding, Adani understanding, that I put all my cards on the table and I am transparent whenever you wish to. Because I realize soon in my practice that my patients make out whenever I experience a feeling, different feeling. For example, I had a secondary school teacher who was a very difficult borderline with bipolar disorder. And she one day straight away told me, you don't act as if you are a sthita prajna. Even when you do that, there are lines on your face which betray you. So there are many such instances. So I thought there is little point in hiding what I'm feeling. So if they ask, I give and I say that, look, I'm even a child doesn't feel afraid of me. If there is something, please let me know and we will discuss it.
Correct. So as I said, ki one of the reasons to go in therapy is to
Mhm.
be clear is to clear out your material as far as you can.
Yes.
Second is to
Mhm.
know what has not been cleared. Okay, what is it?
Mhm.
Third is to ensure that you don't do a reverse projective identification on the client.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we will be putting our feelings into the client. So as we say, in the room, there are two transparencies and two counter transparencies and two projective identifications.
Mhm.
So there are 6 elements going on simultaneously, and we should
Mhm.
minimize ours.
And we are juggling.
So we should try to minimize ours so that
Mm.
the client gets processed in the session, not us.
Free ground they get. Open ground. Mhm.
Because psychological entities are getting processed.
Mhm.
And even if we don't want, some of our own stuff is also get processed. But
Mhm.
we have to ensure that the majority of processing that is happening is of the client.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand and agree.
So,
And sorry,
yeah, please go on.
I, I had the doubt about the first line. Freud discovered the unconscious and the primacy of desire. frustration, desire frustration. So here I had to say that desire frustration, as it gives rise to pathology, it is also the desire frustration that leads to development, like maturing out of Oedipal stage and identifying after the father and uh, letting the desire for mother go.
Correct. So the idea there is of a term which is called optimum frustration,
Ah,
because no frustration will lead to narcissism and entitlement.
hmm,
If a child
yes.
gets most of what he wants, it's very likely he might develop into a narcissistic person with entitlement.
Hmm,
At the same time, if it's the other extreme of
hmm,
complete deprivation,
hmm,
that will create pathology. So too much satisfaction or too much deprivation creates pathology. And the
hmm,
healthy zone is in between of optimum frustration and optimum satisfaction. So when Freud is referring to frustration, he is referring to the pathological frustration. So in projective identification, what happens is कि unbearable feelings are put into the other overtly or covertly. Like what we just saw was overt. कि I feel anger and I put it into you and you start feeling anger. And the covert will be I irritate you and you start feeling angry. That's a covert pathology projective identification. Like many times what the client will say is they will just not cooperate with you and keep cutting down all your arguments. And you will start feeling helpless. Okay, now what to do? What statement to use? Which technique to use? Nothing is working. The client is completely in an uncooperative, defiant, or a parallel position. We are just not connecting. So you start.
Position, behaving as if he is the analyst and he analyzing me all the time and blocking every interpretation that I try to give.
Correct. So
Mhm.
that is a slightly complicated thing.
Okay.
He is also addressing his narcissism
Hmm.
by role reversal.
Yeah. Hmm.
And at the same time,
Hmm.
he is making you feel helpless.
Hmm.
So if we take a simpler example like then this, the client is just blocking everything.
Hmm.
Right? Let us take
Hmm.
three examples.
Hmm.
First, the client just blocks everything.
Hmm.
Whatever you say, he says, no, I don't feel anything of that sort. Nothing has happened of that type.
Hmm.
If you say, get in touch with the feelings, no, I don't get in touch. Nothing is happening in me. If you ask somebody, ask him, has there been any problem? How is the sleep? Everything is okay.
Hmm.
So he blocks you every way. Whatever interpretation you give, nothing works. And you start feeling helpless. Okay, now what to do? Only 10 minutes are over. How to pass the rest of the session?
Hmm.
So you are feeling helpless. So this is a projective identification of helplessness.
Hmm.
That the client wants to tell you, okay, this is exactly how I feel. That I am feeling helpless. Whatever I say is just being denied by people around me. Whatever I say, they oppose. Whatever I say, they dismiss. Whatever I say, they deny. I don't know how to talk to them. I feel helpless with them. So they are communicating to you unconsciously their problem by making you feel firsthand what they exactly are feeling. So this is a covert projective identification. And there is something which is also called a delayed projective identification. That often after the session is over, after half an hour or 1 hour, you will start feeling feelings which are not your own. Or you will have a dream which the patient will have left with you. You are dreaming for the patient. Because when you analyze the dream, you realize that there is nothing yours about the dream. It's all of the patient's material. So there are things which you feel after the session is over. So these are different forms of delayed projective identification. Now, the first we saw was the patient just making you feel helpless in a covert by blocking everything that you say, by not agreeing to anything that you say. Second is what you said, even a more complicated thing of including role reversal. That he makes you feel helpless and he makes you feel submissive. And he takes the more powerful position. So that is because he can't bear anyone more powerful than him. Or the envy is too high. How does a therapist know more and I have to come to him? In my fantasy, I should know more than him and he should come to me. So the envy can create a role reversal. Narcissistic injury can create a role reversal. Inability to bear authority can create a role reversal. And along with these objectives, he also puts into you helplessness. So there is a combination of role reversal and projective identification. Like I had one client, he would come and in my room there were two chairs, one for myself, one for the client, and we were doing face to face on the chair. And on the side there was a couch. But it was not for him, because for him we were doing a face to face on the chair therapy. So when he would come, he would go and sit on the couch. He would not sit on the chair. And that has to do with fragile narcissism. That the problem there is, the first problem is to accept that I have a problem. So accepting that I have a psychological problem is very difficult for this group of people. So they will not accept. Second, it's very difficult for them to obey the frame of therapy. That you will come and sit there, that you will cooperate with me, you will do free association, I will be a blank screen, you will come at the right time, right day, and you will go at the right time, right day. So this is a very different group where they are telling you indirectly. It is not a projective identification. It's an indirect communication that I can't take the frame of therapy. So as we saw, in psychotic cases, often you will have projective identification which is delayed. After 2 hours after the session, you start getting strange visuals, strange feelings. So what Klein used to say was that projective identification is just a defense. That what we find difficult to bear within us, we put it in somebody else. But Bion developed this concept further, and he said projective identification is a sort of communication. It's a non-linguistic communication. That this is what I am suffering from. This is what I cannot bear. This is what I cannot accept in myself. You please help me. This is what I cannot process. You process and give it to me. That this is what I find difficult to own up. You tell me to own up and I will own it up, but I can't say it to myself. So Bion developed the idea of projective identification beyond the defense. And he said it's also a form of communication. It's also a cry for help. It's also a cry for a processing system. That I am unable to process my anger. I want some other human system where I can put my thing, let him process and give it back to me. And this is something that artificial intelligence cannot do. It cannot contain your anger and process it and give it back to the patient. So artificial intelligence can do everything that is in language, but this is a non-linguistic part of therapy. The part of transference, counter-transference, the part of projective identification, a part of containment, which we'll come to in a moment. These are non-linguistic parts of therapy. They happen in silence. And these parts are very difficult to go to artificial intelligence. You are saying something.
But sir, even in the working groups, it must be extremely complicated with all the lines going from one to the other because transference, counter-transference, transference, counter-transference, and it may be a chaos where we cannot predict the outcome actually.
Correct. You are right.
Uh,
That's the reason why most people are skeptical about group therapy.
um,
People look at it not as a equal substitute, but rather as something better than nothing.
mm,
Okay, instead of somebody just not getting therapy, let him get group therapy. But very few people think of it as a substitute of individual therapy. Most people prefer individual therapy because, as you rightly pointed out, there are too many unconscious processes at work, and that leads
yes.
to subgroups and struggles between the subgroups. So there is no group without a subgroup.
How valent groups are different because valent groups are different, no? Where we are supposed to help the other therapists who cannot process the material, and I found the time given is too insufficient. That was my initial reaction for discussing any single case.
That is right.
20 minutes and then coming back to life, then going back and then coming back to life is like. Uh, What do they think about the situation and about me after I die, symbolically? And then I come back to life and get the opportunity to speak with them. So it is like a funeral meditation.
Correct.
But the time still is much less, and you cannot bring everything that you have been facing into the group.
Correct. So this is where supervision is of different types.
Uh,
Individual supervision and group supervision are two different things.
uh,
Both of them have their strengths and limitations.
mhm.
And the limitation of group supervision is limited amount of time for each, too many voices, too many confusing and conflicting suggestions, and the problem of confidentiality and social shame or social attack or damage to social reputation. You never know out of the group who leaks some confidential information about you.
Yes.
So these are all the difficult parts of group therapy. The positive parts are, okay, it is very good for creative discussions and generating new ideas. So if you are doing an ideation on any problem, it is good to have many ideas coming from people who have very different backgrounds. And something better than nothing. Okay, if one cannot afford individual supervision, then no harm in going for a Belint or a group supervision. But individual supervision is really necessary because many of the deeper parts of you cannot be discussed in public.
Yes.
And you need time. Like one particular case will need at least 2.5 hours to 3 hours.
Exactly.
It cannot be done in a hurry. Like even when we used to do dream analysis, we used to need 2.5 hours to 3 hours for one dream analysis. Even in a group. So similarly, when you bring a process note of one session, that some session you find very difficult and you note it down what happened. He said this, I said this, and you bring that transcript. Or if you are doing ISTDP, then you bring the video for analysis. it will take 2.5 hours to 3 hours if you really want to do deep analysis. Because that will go into two parts. One, what is the pathogenesis and healing path of the patient? And two, what is happening inside of you given your own situation? So there are two people who are getting analyzed.
There is a book by Yalom which I know, but I haven't read it. Therapist and client speak about the
So
session.
what
I,
what
I don't remember the name.
so what I used to do was if somebody used to come for supervision, I used to say, okay, what do you want to be the focus of it? Do you want the focus of it to be case analysis or your own analysis?
Ah, mhm.
Because both will take equal time.
Mm.
If you have just 1.5 hours, let us focus only on case analysis. Okay, how better to heal the patient. And if you want your own analysis, we can do it in two half. The first half is case analysis and second half is your own analysis. Okay, what is happening to transference, counter transference, projective identification inside of. So it's a very time consuming thing.
It is.
I don't think these things can be hurried. It's a wrong track that the whole professional community has got on.
Absolutely.
Even for a dream, you have to allow the dream to sink into you, undergo the incubation process, and then it starts revealing to you. So what Bion felt was that the projective identification was not only a defense, it was also a communication, and it was also borrowing the processing capability of the other.
Sorry, it was also the.
Borrowing the processing capability of the other.
Okay. Mhm.
This is first of Bion's development conceptual as he prepares for his core concept of the container and the contained and uh, the manufacturing of thought. So before he comes to the manufacturing of thought, there are two conceptual developments to be attended to. One is Bion's extension of projective identification from a defense to a communication, a cry for healing, and borrowing the processing capability of the other. The second relates to thought. What is the status of thought in the psychological world? And Freud thought that thought was an instrument to adapt to the outside world for survival and pleasure. That the core desires for survival and pleasure, and to ensure that thought was required to adapt to the outside world because it helps us analyze the outside world and then change ourselves to adapt to it. So it was an adaptation tool for survival and pleasure. Beyond
Thought
thought,
itself as an adaptation tool.
yeah, that thought was only a tool to adapt. Like if you ask a question, why has nature given us the capability to think? What evolutionary purpose does it serve? So one answer can be that thought enables us to adjust to the outside world. Another answer can be thought allows us to do progress because the entire human civilization is a prefrontal lobe civilization. It is that
At
organ.
least,
Huh?
at least it is supposed to be.
Yeah,
Many times there is limbic hijack.
correct. Very correct.
Mhm.
Right now
Mhm.
we are seeing it in the Gulf.
Yes. Mhm.
So one of our fantasies about ourselves is that the civilization is an outcome of the prefrontal
Mhm.
lobe, which means he, thought is what has enabled us to do all that we have done in the world. So thought for progress. So Freud thought is for adaptation to the outside world. Most of us will agree. Apart from it, it's also the vehicle for progress. It is the only tool we have for progress. And Bion brought in a new idea that one of the objectives of thought is to manage the unbearable emotional states inside.
Here also, I remember that Freud said that word is sacred and word makes emotion manageable.
Correct.
And word is the concrete expression of a thought. So that also was perhaps given by Freud, but
Yes.
where I find Beyond's original this thing, thought to manage the unbearable emotional states, it's more like language is a transitional object for a developing child who takes it with him when he undergoes temporary separation, say going into school,
Right.
and language is with him so he can communicate. And it is the tie he retains with the mother. Similarly, thought helps you manage the emotion, retaining the tie with the separation, actually, overcome the separation. At the age of 7, he had to go to the residential school. So,
Right. So
mhm,
symbolization also
mhm,
helps us in maintaining object constancy,
mhm,
because otherwise you will be left with a very primitive mechanism of
mhm. Very
very
in
primitive mechanism of incorporation.
incorporation. Mhm.
Literal taking in of something as it is inside as a picture.
Yes,
So
yes.
symbolization helps us to have a more refined version of it
Mm,
in object
mm,
constancy.
mm,
Apart from the development of ability to understand the
mm,
absence and object constancy.
mm,
So on one hand, we develop the capacity to understand the concept of absence and object constancy even in not being in the perceptual field. On the other hand, we develop symbolization so that we can take those objects inside of us and by identification make them our own. So when we don't feel they're adequately our own, we resort to symbols. And when the symbols also fail, then we have nothing left but to go back to the concrete incorporation. Right? It is the regressive process is from identification to symbolization to concrete internalization, incorporation. And when that also fails and disintegrates, then we are in real trouble. Because then the good objects have collapsed in the inner world. So Bion says that one of the objectives of thought is to manage the unbearable emotional states. Now, what are these unbearable emotional states? For example, let us say the small child feels hungry or feels some pain in the stomach. He has eaten something he cannot digest. And suddenly the pain comes and he is in stress and he starts crying and throwing his hands and legs, but he does not know what's happening to him. So his mind is thinking of all possibilities. An infinity of problems is open before him. But then the mother comes and tells the child that probably he is hungry and she will bring him milk. So that open infinity of what is happening to me suddenly closes. The name closes the infinity. That when the name is given that you are hungry, nothing to worry. The thousand possibility collapse into one certainty. And the name closes the infinity. And that is how the concept, the thinking closes that emotional state of distress, that cognition, that knowing that I am hungry, there's something called hunger, that thought, that thinking, that cognitive process closes that open affective state, which was an anarchic, chaotic, unnamed, inane emotional state. Because we don't know what all was active in what proportion. Was there anger? Was there sadness? Was there fragmentation? Was there shame? Was there fame? We don't know. There were 100 emotions active in that state. It was a chaotic affective state. And now that the name is given, it closes that infinity. So that in such kind of early states, when the child often feels anxiety, fear, dread, it does not know what it is about. And Bion calls it that nameless dread. The dread which does not have a name. And many people feel it even in the adult state. That I feel a sense of dread, but I don't know what it is. I can't name it. I can't find towards what it is. I can't associate with anything. I don't know what is the cause of it. I don't know towards whom this anger belongs, but it's there. So that nameless dread, and in the general, that nameless affect. Dread is one affect, but in general, you can have a state of a nameless affect. So Bion says the child often has this nameless affect, and the mother comes and gives it a name, and the name closes the infinity. And the
I'm sorry, you please
yeah.
complete.
So I was just saying the last statement key. The thought is therefore used to manage the unbearable, chaotic, unnamed emotional states. Sorry, please go.
This what is a paper by Madden and Sim about. The paper is making sense of or making meaning of fibromyalgia. It is a paper from social anthropology and social medicine. I have that paper. I will share it with you. And how receiving a name, even though the illness is so amorphous and difficult to understand, receiving a name is very helpful to the client, to the patient,
Correct.
making meaning of fibromyalgia. There are 6 steps they have argued until you reach a diagnosis.
Oh,
The example of fibromyalgia. I'll share that paper immediately with you.
if you have 5 minutes, can you say something? What is the meaning of it, fibromyalgia?
Fibromyalgia is the kind of neurasthenia spectrum disorder wherein the patient has pain, chronic widespread pain in the body, mental symptoms also including fatigue, then what do you call that? Fibro fog,
You.
cognitive difficulties, and insomnia.
Oh,
So these are the prominent symptoms, and it is like chronic fatigue syndrome, but here pain is predominant.
correct.
And still they make subtypes of it, pain predominant, fatigue predominant, or uh, insomnia and cognitive symptom predominant, fibromyalgia,
You mentioned
muscles
7
and
steps.
tendons.
So you mentioned 7 steps. What were they like?
6 steps of, I don't remember the steps now, but 6 steps of coming to deriving and accepting a name to one's illness, and
Correct.
how receiving a name actually reduces your dread and makes you feel that you have some power and you can do something about it. Otherwise, you are completely helpless.
Correct. Now, this actually is a double-edged sword.
Mhm.
While we are discussing beyond and we are discussing the early life state, it is more true than not. But when we look at adult patients, it's a double-edged sword. What happens is कि patients on the anxiety spectrum or depression spectrum often respond well to when they are told what they are suffering from. Like for them, giving a diagnosis itself is salutary as step one.
Yes.
Okay, now they know very clearly I am suffering from X, and many people suffer from X, and it can be managed. There is a second group which just does not want any label. So many of the personality disorders are such, like borderline, like narcissism. They don't want the name. Dependents don't mind a name. Bipolar don't mind a name. But narcissistic and borderline, they are extremely touchy about the name. And you give them the diagnosis and immediately they will say, I am much more than this. I am not only this.
I thought they will counter it and say, oh, I don't have it.
That's also true. Some people do. Some
There is
people.
another paper, Marie Kiona, K-O-H-N-E. And that paper is about ontological status of psychiatric diagnosis, the example of neurasthenia,
Huh,
in which they say that their psychiatric diagnoses are not concrete entities, they are social constructs.
right,
And the moment you give diagnosis to a patient, the patient changes. There are changes that undergo in him, as well as there are changes that undergo in the diagnosis, concept of diagnosis also. So it is a different kind of perhaps epistemological appropriation, one can say. How do you appropriate or make meaning out of the process? And they say that all these names are they have limitations, lot of limitations. That's what I remember. They are not as if a patient is very afraid of diagnosis, the quoting and discussing this paper helps them. If the patient is afraid because of anemia and there are no names and no name and panic, discussing Madden and Sim help them.
correct.
So this is how I use one of the two medicines
Right.
which are suit whom. Mhm.
So we have to be careful about the
Yes.
unconscious projection of,
Uh-huh.
and this, uh, okay. So coming
Un-
to
Unconscious projection of, I did not get that word.
uh,
There was lots.
the Bion talks about two processes, right? The process of projective identification and the process of thought.
Mm.
He develops both the processes in his own way. He adds some original things to both. To projective identification, he adds it. It's also a communication, it's a cry for help. It's also a processing, borrowing the processing system. For thought, he says, one of the objectives is to bear the unbearable emotional states. That thinking closes those difficult affective states. So we have to be careful about our own feelings going into others and making others angry. In passive aggression, this is a most important mechanism, projective identification, that they will get you angry. And then when you feel angry, they will complain, why are you angry?
Yes.
So many people who say everyone beats me, we have to check, because if someone says everyone beats me, that means everyone is sadistic. Now that is less of a possibility than the other possibility that maybe you are masochistic. So they may be projecting their, through projective identification, they may be putting their own anger and making the other person get angry and then complain everyone scolds me. So
Yes.
like there, the normal rule is that the chances of everyone you meet being sadistic are low.
Yes.
to the chance that you may be masochistic and soliciting that end. So
Absolutely.
in passive aggression, the core mechanism that is used is of projective identification, and this can go really deep. In case of husband and wife, when one is a covert passive aggressive narcissist, he can take the other not only to depression, but even to suicidal ideation, even to suicidal planning. Passive aggression can be so difficult.
What will be the internal dialogue of the person who is driven to suicide because of the passive aggression in the spouse? The internal dialogue is like, I'm of no use, I cannot convince you, I cannot make you feel good, I'm so inadequate. Will it be like that or?
No. Uh,
Mhm,
the usual is of very high anger, which cannot be expressed rationally, or you cannot win an argument, or the other is just
mhm,
not ready to
mhm,
accept his faults. Like
mhm.
there are three, four things. One, let's say somebody is in fault and just does not accept the fault, it actually
Yes,
triggers more anger.
yes.
Number one. Number two, the unconscious irritation process is such that the
Mm,
other person is always playing in the ground of plausible deniability.
mm.
So when through his covert passive action he gets you irritated and angry, and then he tells you, okay, why are you angry? Have you gone crazy? What have I done? I said this, everyone says this, everyone all the time. Nobody gets angry and you get angry. Something is wrong with you.
It's like,
So it is gaslighting, but in a ground of plausible deniability, in a way that if you get a third person neutral judge, he will side with the passive aggressive person. Because on the surface of it, he seems everything right, all the boxes are ticked. Because the attack is so insidious, so unconscious, so surreptitious that it's very difficult to make out who is attacking whom. And we have to be very careful because such pairs, when they come to the therapist, the covert passive aggressive narcissist is able to convince the therapist by and large that he is right and the other person is sick and needs therapy. It's very difficult first time not to be convinced by that person. It's only after seeing one or two patients we realize that we got convinced because of this person being a covert passive aggressive narcissist. This can also happen between a parent and a child. That on the surface, the parent does no wrong, does not beat up the child, does not deny any desire, takes interest in education, takes interest in well-being of the child, but in a subtle way controls the child completely and induces fear in the child surreptitiously through others. So he does not say, fear me. He tells the mother that you tell him, if you do something, I will tell the father. So in a surreptitious, indirect way, they control, they put passive aggression into the child, and the child is in a dilemma that my father is one of the best fathers one can have, and unconsciously I have rage towards him. And the rage then bottles up, and I have seen it going to schizophrenia. I have seen this kind of bottled up rage of a covert type accumulate to the extent that somebody can go schizophrenic or somebody can get into suicidal planning. And when I tell them that this is because of bottled up rage towards your father, they are just not able to accept it. They know in the heart of their hearts it's true, but they find it very difficult to accept because the other is always in the ground of plausible deniability. Okay, what did I do? And what he did is so subtle, it's very difficult to remember or bring it up or defend it in public. So this brings us to two other. So we saw two of Bion's conceptual developments: development of the idea of projective identification, development of motivation for thinking, purpose of thinking. Now we get to two more concepts which are at the heart of Bionian theory: the container and the contained. And there Bion gave a very famous statement: thoughts awaiting the thinker. So Bion says that we all need containers. We all pass through stages or states where we are not able to contain our emotions and they are overflowing. And at such times, we all need containers. People who are strong, who are not overwhelmed by our emotion, but who are with us, and they can tell us, don't worry, nothing will happen. We'll find a way out. So we go to them in extremely anxious states. And part of our anxiety is projected into them by projective identification. And they are able to contain it. They don't become anxious like us. They don't become unregulated. They are able to contain that projective identification and tell you without losing their peace, their happiness, their smile, their confidence, self-assurance. Hey, don't worry, we'll go away, we'll find a way out. And then we feel good. So we all need containers at different parts of our life whenever we are in crisis. And person who does not find container is overwhelmed by his crisis emotions. And if you remain overwhelmed for a long time, that then becomes a natural state. You remain fragmented more often than not. Because there is no container who can contain you and give that cohesion. You remain fragmented in pieces. Because when you go to a container, you see him in a cohesive state, despite containing it. And then you realize it's possible to do that. You internalize his capability to remain cohesive and not fragment. And at some point you learn it. You make it your own. But if you have seen all people around you who are overwhelmed by emotions, you also become overwhelmed. Okay, whenever there is a slightest of crisis and people become overwhelmed by it, this is how you see your parents. The parents always have catastrophic thinking. A slightest of challenge and they are overwhelmed. They are fragmented. They are not cohesive. They are not able to contain the crisis. So you also learn that kind of template. Okay, this is how we respond to crisis. But if you have seen parents who are very cohesive, very strong, who are not afraid of crisis, who remain happy despite the tension, you also develop that template. You internalize that containing capacity and you slowly develop it yourself. But many people have never seen good containers in their life. And therefore, in any crisis, they just fragment. They are overwhelmed, unregulated. And this is more true in lower income, lower education communities. And in many of the families where the parents are too weak, too fragile, they disintegrate, they fragment at the slightest of challenge. And the child sees it. And that is what he learns. In face of the challenge, this is how we should respond, by fragmenting. Later on, when he sees others who are cohesive and strong, he starts questioning that maybe I should also be like it and not be like my parents. This is a more mature, stronger, courageous way of facing the world. And he starts questioning, why can't I develop this capacity? And then he starts watching the other person, slowly practices himself, and partly by resolution, partly by practice, and partly by internalization, and partly by learning from the other, he develops that capacity. Should we break?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
please go.
is similar to the point that I had learned when it came to learning about qualitative maternal deprivation.
Right.
That the deprived baby learns to derive parenting from different sources and becomes actually resilient and strong because he draws on from different parent figures in the environment. And once the child knows what to take from whom without blaming them, he has passed the test. He gets liberated.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this is also the mechanism of destitution,
Uh-huh.
that many people, regardless of how much money they have, they always
Mhm. They always.
feel destitute.
Mhm.
Often you see in bipolar,
Mhm.
right, or in some sort degrees of borderline, that they feel
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
at times it's accompanied by catastrophic thinking that what I have I'm going to lose very soon.
Mhm.
That I losing everything is the rule, and I keeping things I own is an exception. And what I have is going to be lost very soon.
For
So this,
every real pathology, there is a make-believe pathology, like hypochondriasis, like I will lose this, like I'm destitute, like I have this deprivation and that.
so
Fantastic.
the
Mhm.
situation that you referred to is very
Mhm.
interesting from this point of view.
Yeah.
That some people
Mhm.
have the problem of destitution
Mhm.
because of early life losses. They believe that they will lose everything there.
Mhm.
That just as they lost the good breast or they lost the good mother, they will lose everything. That is their destiny. But some people use it as a defense,
Mhm.
that they have seen in very early life a cold mother, a sad mother, a dead mother, and they fused with that,
Mhm.
and somehow they survived. So they know. So what now they know is, okay, in destitution, I can be with the mother. It's only you and me and no one else. If I become prosperous, I lose the mother.
If I become prosperous, I lose
The
the
mother.
mother. Mhm.
So it becomes a choice between prosperity and attachment. And the unconscious mind chooses attachment, and therefore the defense of destitution. That I must maintain that I can go destitute anytime, that I am destitute. Otherwise, I lose the mother. That's also the mechanism of not being the best version of oneself. Because if I become the best version of myself, then I reach such states of excellence that all those who are attached to me, they fall behind. And out of envy and mockery, they slowly break from me. So in order to maintain attachments, I must dilute down my capabilities. I must maintain destitution in order to have those attachments stable. So
Kind
there,
of, sorry,
please go on.
kind of prelude to success depression,
Right.
preparing for success depression.
The sadness there will be partly Oedipal,
Mm.
partly why has it come now? Those who I wanted to show are no longer with me. Or at what cost has it come? It has taken away everything. Now, what is the point of it? it has come too late. So there may be a series of reasons for the suppressed depression. One is the Oedipal guilt, the Oedipal sadness. Second can be too late. Third can be it has come after everyone has gone. Fourth can be what cost has it extracted from me? What is left now? The fifth can be the omnipotence is now in front of me. And I know it's not omnipotent.
I know.
It's not omnipotent. I thought this stage will be omnipotent stage when I win, when I am successful, when I'm given a reward, an award. But now I'm given the award, I feel it. I feel high, but I don't feel omnipotent.
The colors are a drain of the achievement.
So I thought when I get the Nobel Prize, I'll be omnipotent. My omnipotence was projected. Now I have it in my hand. I don't feel omnipotent.
Because I know it was adjusted and it is given for me to take away something else from me which is more precious. Like Faust, the film, Faust, the devil, I sell my soul to the devil. What I
So
get is valueless.
correct. So
Sorry. Okay.
one of the yeah. So what we were looking at is the unbearable emotional states the child
Mm,
brings.
mm.
The mother has to contain it. And if the mother is not containing, the child also does not learn regulation. Because the mother was not regulated, the child never got a model to learn from. So when the child becomes the parent and his child comes to him, he behaves exactly the same.
Somebody has to break the chain, and therefore the therapist is there. You
Correct.
go to the therapist and learn how to break the cycle. Stop this intergenerational violence.
Correct.
Fantastic.
The intergenerational link is there, and that
Very
is
nice.
broken by therapy. So the therapist has to act as a good container. That when the patient brings difficult emotions, we contain it. We don't go dysregulated by that. If we can't contain it, if we also burst out, we go unregulated. Right? The patient does not learn containment. And containment is a very, very important element.
I'm sorry, I'm tempted to take 2 minutes of your time more. I I remembered yesterday mentioned it to somebody that I was seeing a patient who is a 20-year-old girl, engineering past, a child of both parents engineers but having a bad discord, and she's a difficult borderline narcissistic, perhaps very complicated, cannot put into sadistic or masochistic, but has both traits. And she would come and see me, and they're mixed sessions all the time. And when I said some time for limit setting that whatever you were saying was actually hurting to me, and this is a very painful thing that you have said. I'm also sensitive. Then she gave me a string of abuses. If you are sensitive, why are you sitting here? Go home. Take out that certificate, put out in the waiting hall of MD psychiatry, make it into a roll and shove it up your ass. Why are you here?
Right.
Go home. And I realized and took it as an insult that she was uh, testing me and I must survive this insult.
Right.
And I think I did. You said you are going frenzy. I'm not bothered about it. I know that healthy, noble personality can get devastated when the trusted patient gives insults. Or that is that, but it's not a point to argue. Go home. I'm fine with whatever your views are, your views. And then She comes back several times, but doesn't pay even when they can. All of them are very well placed. And then I took it as an unending insults. And I told her that henceforth it is not going to be possible for me to see you without charges. You pay the fees and I will see you. So that, and then she dropped out.
So, from a psychoanalytic point of view,
Mhm.
not paying you was not an act of finance, it was an act of anger.
Um,
And the anger from the parents was transferred onto you.
mm,
And borderline would always mean two things. One, that there is a very early life loss,
mm.
and the loss was not just of the caregiver, but there were times when there was nobody and the child has internalized emptiness. Number two. So, number one, there is loss, early life loss. Number two, there is internalization of emptiness. Number three, there is a constant fear of abandonment. And a preempting of that abandonment is by leaving the person. That I leave you before you leave me.
Exactly.
So that is also the abandonment is also there. That I will insult you before you insult me. And the fourth is the borderline production process also involves lot of attacks. So in all probability, there was early life loss, internalization of emptiness, constant fear of abandonment, and the parents were very attacking and unpredictable. And there
There
is
is some,
no change towards the
there
parents.
is, there was some history of sexual abuse which she chose not to discuss with me and told me as such. I said, fine, I won't pry upon or I won't intrude and probe. And so, yeah, absolutely.
So this is one of the questions where it becomes a frame question.
Mm, mm.
The patient is trying to break the frame. How much long rope can you give? And when you put your foot down?
Yes, sir.
And
I understand.
nobody has any mathematical answer to it. It's all
I
case
understand. I
that
understand and appreciate.
uh,
Mm,
that we take a call based upon
mm.
the situation. A similar
Very enabling.
and a similar situation arises in case of narcissistic personalities. That if you don't go to their core, healing does not happen. If you go to their core, they eject out of therapy.
Mm.
So these are difficult to take calls in therapy because, like, what you are faced with is a frame situation. The frame is you will come at the appointed day, appointed time, at the appointed place. You will leave at the appointed place. You will do free association. I will be anonymous, and you will pay the fixed amount. And you will not contact me after the hours. So this is the frame. Now she's attacking the frame by not paying
And umpteen times coming off without appointment and all that.
and attacking you almost in a personal way,
Mm.
which is also a transgression of the frame. If it was done in that way, it all depends upon how you set the frame. Some people are okay with it, some people draw a line, but it is an attack on the frame, which is actually a displacement of attack on the parents. And there is a deep inside of her is also a fear of closeness. That if you don't attack back like her parents, and she gets close, and then you abandon, then what happens?
I cannot bear the abandon. Yeah, absolutely.
So many people leave when they're actually getting close.
Yeah, Yeah.
It is not your attack. It is their own terror of their closeness,
Yes.
which is covered up by anger. Okay, we fought and I left, but actually they are terrified of closeness. Should we break for a cup of tea and rejoin?
Yes, sir. Thank you. If it is okay with you.
Yes, yes. Let's have a 10-minute break.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we come to a very important concept of Bion, of the container and the contained. In a child-mother relationship, the mother is the container and the child's feelings are the contained. In the therapy room, the patient is the contained and the therapist is the container. If our own buckets are overflowing, we cannot have space to contain the other. So if our own buckets of anger, sadness, guilt are overflowing, there is no space vacant to really contain. So it's necessary for the therapist to empty out his buckets so that there is space to contain. So what happens is, if you don't know the concept of projective identification, container and the contained, then patient can put difficult feelings into you and you may act it out. The patient puts irritation and anger into you and you actually become irritable and angry. That is called acting out, that the containing function has failed. Patient is putting something into you and you are acting it out. So that is called acting out. And the container function of the therapist has failed. So Bion goes to the child and he says, the child comes to the mother in unbearable state, emotional states. The mother contains the child in affective terms, also in cognitive terms. At times explicitly speaking about it, at times implicitly. The mother provides a conclusion to the search for meaning of the child's mind. That the child is overwhelmed with a plethora of affects, plethora of questions. What is it that is happening? It is searching for meaning of what is happening. And the mother provides a conclusion to the search for meaning of the child. The name closes the infinity. The mother completes the thinking process and the child learns what the mother says. That this is what describes my state. This is what explains my state. That the child comes in a chaotic affective state, distress, does not know how to think it out, and the mother helps him by giving a name to it and by healing it. So the child slowly learns, looking at the mother, how to convert his unbearable, inane, archaic feelings into thoughts. That if when you are beset with very difficult disintegrated states, all the feelings are jumping inside of you, how do you not get overwhelmed by that state and go into thinking about it? That is what is learned from the mother. That you can look at those feelings from a distance, give it a name, analyze it, process it, feel positive you will be able to solve it, and then go into action. That is the whole process of containing which is happening inside. So initially he learns from the mother that what you are feeling is called hunger. 3 times it happens and the 4th time he knows, now I am hungry. So he learns by repetition and memory. And even more important, he learns how to do this process of finding a name for it and how to process it. So he not only learns what the mother tells him, he not only eats the fish the mother gives him, he also learns fishing. He also learns slowly and unconsciously how the mother is unconsciously processing and arriving at a conclusion. So mother's unconscious functioning is in touch. The child's unconscious is in touch with the mother's unconscious functioning, and unconsciously it learns how the mother does this magical thing. So over a period of time, he not only collects the insights given by the mother, but he also internalizes the thinking function, the way mother does it, and now he has made it his own. So thinking was not inborn. The thinking function slowly developed in the container-contained relationship, in the teacher-taught relationship. And Bion says, thoughts are there to help us bear our feelings, not only to adapt to this world. That in very early life, the child does not know anything about adapting to this world. He only knows about his own internal unbearable feelings. So the Freudian idea is a much later idea of adaptation. But a more primitive state is a state of unbearable feelings which are made bearable by the advent of thought. So this is how, according to Bion, the thought starts in the individual. And later on, so individual learns how to think, first of all. The first stage is the child is given relief by thought. Second, child gathers thoughts. Third, child learns how to think. Later on, thought becomes a tool to adapt to the world. And even later on, thought becomes a tool to satisfy desire. And that is where Bion says, thoughts are awaiting a thinker. That the archaic, unbearable, inane state is awaiting someone to process it and give it a name. It is the container who is awaited. The container is the thinker that the thinking process of the child is awaiting. The thought of the child is awaiting a thinker who is a container. And only after the good enough container, good enough thinker comes into the perceptual field of the child, that a nascent pre-thought material configures itself into a thought. That out of that inane, chaotic, unbearable feeling state, a thought emerges to manage that part and make it less unbearable. But that thought is awaiting a thinker who is a container. And later on, it becomes an internal process. That a matrix of unbearable feelings is inside of us, awaiting our own thinker to go there, understand it, and give it a name. A proto-thought situation awaits the thinking function in us to go into that proto-thought matrix and complete the process and allow the emergence of thought. So this brings us to Bion's next concept of alpha and beta elements. Let us start the concept and next time we'll again do it. So one way to look at all the psychic material from Bion's point of view is to divide it into alpha and beta elements. So what are the alpha elements? Bion says alpha elements are those elements which are accessible to thoughts and dreams. That material can be used for thought or that material can be used for dreams. Whereas beta elements are those elements which are still too primitive, unprocessed. They cannot be used for thought or dreams. An alpha function is that function which converts beta elements into alpha elements. So in the early stage child-mother relationship, the mother provides the alpha function to the child to convert his beta elements into alpha elements. His inane state, chaotic, unregulated inane state is a state full of beta elements. The child only knows distress without a name. So he is full of beta elements, but he does not have alpha function of his own. So he goes to the mother and the mother tells him, you are hungry. So the mother gets in touch with his beta elements, that chaotic state inside of him, the state of distress, analyzes it using her alpha function and comes to the conclusion that you are hungry. So she has given him an alpha element, a thought, you are hungry. And that puts an end, or at least reduces by more than half, that chaotic distress. Bion says too much of beta elements leads to pathology. In psychosis, these beta elements are projected out and then they are felt to be coming back to attack you. And these beta elements can be fragments of anything. It can be anger, it can be sadness, it can be guilt, it can be a mixture of a lot of things. And if these beta elements lead to anxiety, then we experience the nameless dread. That we can't give a name to it, but we feel dreadful. And this is a theme taken up by existential philosophers of that nameless dread. That anxiety.
Philosophers?
Huh?
Which philosophers you said?
Existential.
Existential.
Kierkegaard, Heidegger, Sartre, Albert Camus, Kafka.
Yes, sir.
So they call it anxiety without address. The nameless dread, that the anxiety which we cannot figure out what is the root of it or to whom it belongs, or what is the purpose or where it wants to go, what it wants us to know. So that nameless dread, that anxiety without address. So in the mother-child relationship, the child is full of beta elements. The mother has the alpha function. The child borrows the alpha function. The child slowly develops the alpha function. But the alpha function just cannot operate independent of other feelings. So when does the alpha function is not able to operate? When you have too much of hate. Hate hates the alpha function. Frustration hates the alpha function. Sadness switches off the alpha function. Hopelessness switches off the alpha function. And when the alpha function is switched off, pathology takes over. Because the beta elements then come up in a pathological way. So Bion introduces these two concepts of one, the container and the contained, and two, the alpha elements, the beta elements, and the alpha function, which converts the beta elements into alpha elements. Often in therapy, the therapist provides the alpha function. The client is confused, and you tell him, this is what it is. And he says, yes, now I understand. And I feel much better. I could not think it out myself, but in your presence, I can think it out. And many clients will say this, like the client is in distress from early in the morning. The client carries out till 2 o'clock, cannot carry out any longer. He picks up the phone and he says, can we have a session right now? And you say, okay, not now, but let us say at 3 o'clock we can have it. And he says, okay, you have a session. And the client says, I was struggling till morning, but in your presence, I can now think out clearly. So what is happening is you are the container, the client is the contained, and you are providing the alpha function. The client borrows it, operates it upon his beta elements, and now is able to process it into alpha elements, is able to think clearly, and the distress goes. Half
Very
an hour,
gratifying.
half an hour in the session, and the client says, now I feel much better. I should have called you earlier in the morning.
Yeah. Very gratifying acknowledgements by the patients. And we just feel better when we come to you. Just being with you is
So that is
fantastic.
container contained comes in.
Yes, sir. The grammar is given here.
Normally, we say it is only safety. That you provide me with safety, you provide me with understanding. With you, I know I am safe, and with you, I know you will understand me. Doesn't matter what I say, you will understand me. You will not attack me. But beyond safety is the containing phenomenon. Next time, we will go into different types of containing. You can just have passive containing. You can have active containing, or you can have a containing leading towards the ineffable O, which we'll talk next time. Some more concept of beyond ineffable O, which is almost like the Indian spirituality.
Oh.
I mean, no wonder he was in his early childhood in India.
Yeah, one wonders what must have been the influences. The
And
pre-verbal influences deep inside. I have a patient who is a British lady from health profession. She's married to an Indian Maharashtrian male. She's 80 plus, and she dreams often that she's taking an auto rickshaw in Pune, and she's wandering the streets of London looking out for her home. And she gives me permission to share her case and the dreams. She initially said, I came here thinking this is a third world country, so the medicine also must be third world. And to top that all, doctor takes fees from the patient directly. Oh no. But now I realize I will not go back to NHS because the doctors here give attachment and relationship, which I don't get NHS.
so, one thing we can definitely say from her dream that she doesn't feel at home at her home.
Absolutely not. Immigration is a very tough pill to swallow. Very tough.
It's not easy to
Times.
stop the attachments and build a new one.
Yes. Yes.
Leaving a place is far more difficult than leaving at times many people. The attachment to the place is very strong.
And the people around. The daughters blame her for marrying an Indian. I, I'm not sure, man. I'm sure I'm not able to handle everything that she presents to me, but I'm trying to, uh, let us say, getting updates to my processor when I'm doing classes.
That's what we
And
all.
this is great. This is great.
That's what we all do.
Thank you, sir.
So it's a very important concept of the container and the contained. And in therapy, as we say, if you just provide safety and understanding and not attack the patient, that's the first part of the therapy is done. 30%
Absolutely.
therapy is done.
Absolutely.
Like no concepts are needed for that. You
Correct.
just have to be a safe person, non-attacking.
Absolutely.
Then the second part of refinement comes, how you can refine that containing. Because when the patient says things that are not pleasant and yet you don't attack, the first level of containing is done, which is passive. And the next level comes of active. What more can be done?
Yes, sir.
And apart from containing, how can you link the tool of interpretation to containing? And then we look at what Bion says, the healing that happens by not doing anything, what he calls the ineffable O. The event which happens, which cannot be known completely, but the after effects of that are healing. That what we say healing is actually what we know, but the event of healing is something else that we don't know. We see the final outcome of it in terms of what we call healing. And often it happens when we don't do anything, and this don't do anything has a lot of meanings. It is not a don't do anything because we don't know what to do.
And both resonate in silence, according to Freudian analytic tongue.
Correct. And the don't do anything is a conscious effort. It is not
Absolutely.
competence or not knowing. It is a conscious not doing because you know that will work better than doing. And like any other tool, it has its place of application and it's not universal. It may happen that initially you may have a lot of doing to do in therapy. And after some time, you can practice this tool of not doing anything because a lot of things have already been done. And now not doing will help. And there comes times in therapy where after a long therapy, you reach a stage where not doing can do more than doing.
Becoming a karta.
Correct. So in Bion's words, let no one who knows fill up the empty space. Let the empty space be empty till it decides to speak.
Till it decides to
Speak,
pick or
speak,
fill.
speak,
Speak. Speak.
say something. So let no one who knows fill up the empty space. Let the empty space be empty till it decides to speak. Because only then originality will come in, unshaped by your theory or interventions. Otherwise, often our theory and our interventions, they shape what is in the unconscious about to come up. They give it a different kind of shape. It is not original, it is shaped by our interventions and our theory. So what is inside original, let it come up as it is. And the best way to do it is to allow it the empty space that it can come up and fill up. And obviously, this is not what happens across the therapy. It is a stage in therapy when this can happen. But when the stage has been reached, it's a very powerful tool that allow the empty space to be itself till it decides to speak. And only then, what is inside can come up as it is, unshaped by our expectations and interventions.
Powerful. Very powerful.
It's very deep, very powerful. So beyond that way is very, very deep. It's like almost an ontological entry into psychoanalysis, just at the roots of it. Should we stop for the day and again
Yes, sir.
continue next time? Next time we
Yes,
can
sir.
complete beyond.
Okay. Thank you, sir.